All right, welcome to the Pilla Tax Academy live stream show. I'm so excited to be here with you because we've got the end of the year. And this is important because many people don't know how important it is to have all of your things in order before December 31st, 2020. So we want to bring on our expert, Mr. Dan Pilla, in my opinion, the nation's #1 tax defense authority, tax authority, period. He's been quoted by major news outlets as being known as the best and the best when it comes to this, even knowing more than the IRS commissioner himself. So that is impressive. So Dan, how you feeling about winding up 2020? What can we expect for the show?
Well, I would say, Jay, it's about time we wind up to 2020. It's been a tough year for a lot of people, Jay, no question about that, especially small businesses, especially small businesses in the service industry, Jay. They've been pounded all year long, and it's still going on. Businesses in Minnesota, service businesses, restaurants, bars, any type of service businesses are still shut down in Minnesota. So this has been a very difficult year. So I think a lot of people are looking forward to rolling the calendar over to 2021 and see what's in store for us going forward here.
Well, you know what we're going to do is we're going to jump right in, get right to the point because as people need information. I have one of my some of my very close friends today that have had a very successful 2020 in spite of everything that's went on. But at the same time, they had to overcome challenges and they adapted and made the adjustments. But they also took a PPP loan and they had questions, Dan, about what to do in regards to a PPP loan. I talked to an accountant today and she said, people are scrambling trying to figure out what to do with these PPP loans. So today, let's do a recap. The IRS rules for deducting expenses on expenses paid with PPP loans. Dan, let's go right into that first question.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute, Jay, and do a recap. As you said, we talked about this last time on the program, the Pilla Tax Academy live stream program, and we spent a great deal of time on it. And so I just want to recap this now very briefly. First of all, what I'm about to go through, Jay, is based on the rules that are in place right now today. Now, Congress may change these rules. And as a matter of fact, the bill that went to the president on Monday does propose to change these rules, but that bill has not been signed. I don't know that that bill is going to be signed. There's no guarantee that the president's going to sign that specific bill. And so until he does, the rules that are in place right now are the ones that I'm going to talk you through. And the rules are this, Jay. If you received a PPP loan and you used all the money as allowed by law, and you anticipate that you're going to get that loan forgiven, then you cannot claim the deductions for expenses that you paid with PPP money on your tax return. All right. Now that sounds like, might sound unfair on its face, but remember, the PPP loan was free money. All right. The government gave you that money. And as long as you use the money properly, you don't have to pay it back. Not only do you not have to pay it back, but it does not get counted as debt forgiveness income. So there are basically no tax consequences to this money whatsoever. So on the face of it, it might seem unfair, but it's really not when you dig into it a little bit, because otherwise it would be a bit of a double dip. But the point is this, Jay, as the rules exist right now, you cannot claim a deduction for expenses paid with PPP money. All right, that's the way it is right now. However, if you applied for loan forgiveness in 2020 and it was disallowed in 2020, then you can claim a deduction for all those expenses you paid as long as they're ordinary necessary business expenses. If you do not believe you're going to get forgiveness of your loan, in other words, you don't even make an application for loan forgiveness because you know you're not going to qualify because of the way you use the money. In that situation, you can claim a deduction for the expenses paid. Again, they have to be ordinary and necessary business expenses. Now, once the calendar rolls over to 2021, Now there's now the situation is if you know by the time you file your 2020 tax return that your loan was not forgiven, you have the right to make an election, Jay. You can elect to expense those items on the 2020 tax return, or you can do it on your 2021 tax return. That's an election that the taxpayer can make if the loan is not forgiven. All right. If the loan is forgiven, again, just to emphasize here, if the loan is forgiven, Jay, then you do not get a deduction for any expenses paid with that PPP money. And that's the way the rules are right now, as you and I are talking here tonight on December the 23rd. That could change tomorrow, which is why you got to stay tuned to the Pilla Tax Academy live feed, because these are the things that we're going to be discussing on an ongoing basis, not just PPP stuff, Jay, although that's a big deal. We're going to talk about all things taxes for small businesses and tax compliance issues and what to do when you get that letter from the IRS and all these, you know, the dealing with audits and collection situations. This is where we live here at the Pilla Tax Academy, and we're going to be going through this stuff on an ongoing basis regularly through this medium here.
You know what? A big question has come in, even though we've covered this before. I think this is important. This is kind of like buttoning everything up, closing out 2020. What do business owners need to know about keeping proper records for PPP loans, Dan?
Question I'm asked all the time. And what I recommend is this. You've got to keep a record keeping system, a separate record keeping system that's going to separately account for those PPP expenses. Now, when I say a separate record keeping system, Jay, I'm not talking about keeping two sets of books like the guys in New Jersey do. All right. Hey, don't be worrying about looking at my books over here. You got nothing to look at. That's not what I'm talking about, Jay. I'm talking about a separate accounting system so that you can very clearly demonstrate how that PPP money was used. And there's two critical reasons for this. Number one, if your loan is forgiven, Jay, you can't claim it. As I just said, you can't claim a deduction for those items on your tax return. So you got to make sure that you've got an accounting system that demonstrates, if the IRS checks it, which they can, and I expect will do, you got to be able to demonstrate that you did not claim unauthorized deductions on your tax return. So that would be the first reason to have this separate record keeping system, to make sure that you can prove that you didn't claim non-deductible expenses on your tax return. So that's number one. The second thing is, if you can only use that PPP money for certain qualified expenses, all right? You can't spend the money on just any old thing. Now, if this new law is passed, then the list of things you can spend the money on is going to be expanded. But again, as we sit here right now today, there are only four narrow things that you could have spent the money on. And that's payroll costs, interest but not principal on business loans, rent on business facilities and equipment, and utility payments for business facilities. And all of those contracts and so forth had to be in existence before February the 15th. So if you used your money in that fashion and your debt is forgiven, then you can anticipate, and I believe you should anticipate, that the IRS is going to conduct an audit to see whether in fact you use the money for that reason. All right. So there's two critical things here that you're going to have to be prepared for. And just to recap, number one is to demonstrate that you didn't claim deductions on your tax return that you paid with PPP money. And number two, that you used the money as authorized for one of for those four items. And remember, when we're talking about payroll, at least 60% of the money had to be used for payroll. So Jay, this record keeping system has to be set up, and it's got to be established here so that you can answer those questions if you're challenged. And we could, and as I said, the Internal Revenue Service is gearing up for audits on these areas. And I think we have to anticipate that they're going to be looking at these questions.
You know, this is important information. Everybody needs to know it. A little bit more clarification on that, Dan. I've got a question that's come in here. Are there any particular documents that need to be kept in regards to this issue with PPP?
That's a good question, Jay. Of course, we've got the payroll records, right? You're going to have clear payroll records. And this is not new for small businesses. Small businesses have always had to have clear, and understandable payroll records. But in this situation, we've got the extra layer here now of proving that not only did you pay at least 60%, that not only did you use PPP revenue at least 60% for payroll purposes, but you have to be able to demonstrate that those weren't claimed on your tax return. So the documentation for payroll is critical. You'll need your payroll ledgers, Jay. You'll need your canceled checks that you use to, or deposit records that you use to show that you use to pay your employees with. You're going to need the information on the 941s, and you're going to need the information on the W-2s that you file with the IRS. Now, here's going to be a challenge for businesses, Jay. The 941s, you're not going to file a separate 941 with the IRS to show payroll that was made with PPP money and payroll that wasn't. All right, so the 941s are going to have a gross payroll number, as are the W-2s. They're going to have a gross payroll number. But when you look back at the underlying documents, you're going to have to be able to separate payroll made with PPP money versus payroll that was made outside of PPP. You're going to have to sit down and talk to your accountant about this, all right? If you don't have professional bookkeeping help to get you through this, that's a mistake. It's one of the 15 most common mistakes that small businesses make, is not getting proper professional help in the area of tax compliance, and in particular in the area of bookkeeping. So if you don't have a professional accountant or bookkeeper that's helping you with this, go out tomorrow and get set up with somebody who can help you sort this out. Now, of course, you got to understand that they need to know the nuances of the PPP. And so make sure when you interview a professional that they do understand the nuances of the Paycheck Protection Program. And that's another one of the reasons why you want to be part of the Pilla Tax Academy. We have my newsletter, Pilla Talks Taxes, that comes out 10 times a year. And one of the things that I've done, Jay, in the last couple of months is I pounded the heck out of this PPP stuff in that newsletter, so people understand how this program works, and they can take this information to their accountant if their accountant is not fully versed on it. And this information absolutely will help your tax professional. So very, very clearly, Jay, we need payroll records. Now let me go on. I'm getting long-winded on this answer, but it's an important thing here. We're talking about documentation needed to support your deductions. When we're talking about the balance of PPP proceeds, 40% of the money can be used for interest on loans, not principal, Jay, but interest on business loans, right? Business facility loans, any kind of business loan. The second thing that it can be used for in this area besides payroll is rent on existing equipment or facilities. And then the last thing is utility payments on business facilities. All of these things had to be in place before February the 15th. So if the IRS challenges your use of PPP money for a loan, for example, you paid interest on a loan with it, you got to be able to prove that that loan was in existence before February the 15th. Same with utility payments. Well, we paid for electrical bills and gas bills. Okay, fine. Those bills had to be on business facilities that were in use for business purposes before February the 15th. So, Jay, it is a very detailed set of record-keeping documents that you're going to provide to the IRS if they challenge you, and this is to keep in mind.
February 15th, 2020, correct?
Yes. Good point. February 15th, 2020. So in other words, if you got a business loan on June 1st, 2020 to carry you through the COVID shutdown period, you can't use PPP money to pay the interest on that loan. All right. Now, these rules may change, Jay, with the new law. And once we have a new law that is set in stone, you and I will talk about it. Believe me, I'll flesh it out and we'll talk about it. But as the rules exist right now, these agreements had to be in place before February 15th of 2020.
All right, now listen, everybody, you got to make sure you understand how important this is. The Pilla Tax Academy is about to be a massive, massive flow of information. Today, the system is loading for use tomorrow for the tax professionals that attended the tax defense conference that Dan Pilla put on in October of 2020 in Las Vegas. Well, guess what? Everybody that attended that, live and virtual, within the next 24 hours is going to have access to go in and rewatch that conference again. So, Dan, when you talk about your tax professional, I was just asked this today by someone that has a multi-million-dollar business. They said, I don't know if my tax pro knows all the ins and outs of what they need to know to be representing me with my situation. And they said, what do I do? I said, they better go to the Tax Defense Live Conference that's going to be available virtual. So starting next week, probably around Tuesday of next week, anybody that's a tax professional will be able to buy that course that comes with 12 continuing education credits. This is huge for tax professionals because some of you tax professionals that are watching this, and you know other ones, are trying to scramble to get those in by the end of the year. So this is a good opportunity to do so. So we'll get that up for you around Tuesday of next week. Take that course. Now, small business owners. I was asked about a small business owner today. Did millions of dollars last year and said, hey, what's the things I need to do? I'm like, you need to take the tax mastery course that will be released sometime next week. Go get your discount now. How do you get it? Go to PillaTaxAcademy.com. PillaTaxAcademy.com. And then you can hit products and go ahead and pre-purchase so that you can get the discount. Because, Dan, maybe you can stress the importance of these business owners that are watching tonight, are going to watch this recording. Why would they want to take the business owner mastery course that you put together? Why would they want that, Dan?
Well, Jay, here's what business owners need to know. And for those of you who don't know me, let me just give you a little, just a little bit of background here. I've been doing tax litigation work for over 40 years. I've seen every kind of tax case you can imagine. I've seen a few cases that you probably can't imagine of people in trouble with the IRS. I have seen every kind of business operation get sideways with the Internal Revenue Service for one reason or another. One of the main focuses that I've had over these years is helping small business people and mid-sized business people deal with IRS problems. Now, Jay, a lot of small businesses are listening to this and they say, well, Dan, I don't have to worry about that. I'm honest. I don't cheat on my tax return. And Jay, that's good. And I don't want you people cheating on your tax return out there. All right. Don't cheat on your tax return. That's the simplest advice that anybody's going to give you when it comes to IRS compliance. But here's what the problem is. It's not a matter of being a cheater. It's not a matter of being a criminal. The fact of the matter is there's millions and millions of people that get in trouble with the IRS every year through no fault of their own for all kinds of reasons, Jay, because of circumstances beyond their control. All right. And here's the biggest problem we got with small businesses. And this is true, not just with small businesses, anybody that's interacting with the IRS. This is what you need to know. It doesn't matter if you're honest. And the reason it doesn't matter, this might sound crazy, but here's what I'm talking about. The reason it doesn't matter is because the burden of proof is on you. The IRS doesn't spank people with penalties and disallowed deductions and increased tax liabilities just because they're dishonest. They do it because people can't prove that they prepared their tax return correctly. The burden of proof is on the taxpayer, Jay. The IRS never has to prove you did it wrong, except in rare circumstances. They never have to prove you did it wrong. You have to prove you did it right. And this is where businesses get sideways. It's not that they're cheating. It's not that they are failing to follow the rules. It's not that they're criminals. That's not it at all. They simply don't know how to prove that they did it right. And this is the challenge that people have. And when you're talking about an accountant or a bookkeeper, these people perform a vitally important function for businesses, particularly small businesses that are dealing with limited staff and they don't have the expertise in and of themselves to go through and do the accounting. These accountants and bookkeepers play a vital role in this process, but they're not litigators, Jay. This is where it falls apart if you're just simply relying on an accountant. They're not litigators. And this is why you've got to understand how to deal with the Internal Revenue Service on the front end so you don't ever get sideways with them. And obviously it's important that you're honest, but that's not going to win the case for you. You can't sit across the table from a tax auditor and say, oh, don't worry about my tax return. I'm honest. We can go. Well, they're not going to do that. They're going to dig through your records. They're going to dig through everything you did on that return. And if there's a mistake on the return, Jay, you're responsible for it. And you have to prove you did it right.
This information right here is just critical information. So get over to PillaTaxAcademy.com. Small business owners, get the course. If you're an everyday taxpayer, everyday taxpayers, grades 1 through 12, who taught us anything about taxes in school? Yet we're held to the highest accountability for what, like Dan just said, what we don't know. Dan put together a taxpayers' rights mastery course. What I love about this is you can go get it now before it's released next week and save money from when it's released to the general public. And Dan, if I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong on this, don't people need some year-end tax write-offs? And so if they grab this course before the end of the year, can't they utilize that as a tax write-off, Dan?
Well, let's be clear about the taxpayers' rights course, Jay. The taxpayers' rights course does not talk about whether this is deductible or that's deductible. The taxpayers' rights course is information geared at the general public, small business owners, yes, but primarily the general public, because the small business mastery course is for business people. This course, Jay, for individuals, is going to help you deal with the most common problems that individual taxpayers face. Just for example, the IRS mails out 100 million computer notices every year. Now, they're not going to mail out that many in 2020 because the IRS was shut down for about 8 weeks. And between May and June, middle of April through middle of June approximately, and they started back slowly. So those notices are not going to reach that number this particular year. But every single year for the last, I don't know, however long I've been paying attention, Jay, 100+ million notices. Every single year, the IRS issues about 35 million penalties against individuals and small businesses. All right. These are the common problems that people have to deal with. I'll tell you one thing that I'm dealing with all the time over the last couple of months. People mail a check to the IRS for their taxes. The check hasn't been cashed. Is the IRS now going to charge me with interest and penalties? Well, here's one of the things you're going to learn from the Taxpayers' Rights Mastery course, and that is this. The IRS does not have the right to assess penalties and interest against an individual when the delay that caused the interest is attributable to either IRS error or IRS delay. Well, most certainly in the context of the COVID situation with the IRS shutdown. When the IRS was shut down for that 8 weeks, Jay, 10 weeks approximately, there were 11 million letters that piled up in the IRS's system that they were not opening, they were not processing. All right, so these were tax returns that were filed, checks that were paid to the IRS. They were notices that, or I should say responses that people were writing to the IRS in response to notices. All kinds of things were going on here, and the IRS was not answering their mail. All right, 11 million unanswered letters piled up. Now the IRS is working through the pile, but the National Taxpayer Advocate has just advised us that they still got a backlog north of 5 million letters. 5 million letters have not been answered. Again, these include checks that were sent to the IRS, tax returns that were filed, filing extension requests. All right. Somebody made a request, an extension of time to file their return. The IRS never processed it. So when you file your tax return, they're going to hit you with a penalty, Jay. And you need to know that you got the right to get these penalties canceled. And the Taxpayers' Rights Mastery course is going to show you exactly how to do that. So these are the kinds of things that we focus on in that course.
This is great. So great information. Segue back over to the PPP. Another question here. What if, this is a big one. This is coming in a lot. What if you don't spend all of your PPP money by the end of 2020? What happens then, Dan?
Don't spend, that's qualifications for getting forgiveness is that you use the money within the time period that the law gives you to use the money. Now, here's how that works. You've got 24 weeks from the time your loan was funded in which to spend the money, or up until December 31st, whichever comes first. The 24 weeks of December 31st, whichever comes first. Well, Jay, we're just about 10 days away from the about 10 days away from the year ending here. So if you haven't spent your PPP money, you got to do it in the next few days here in order to fully qualify for forgiveness. If you have not spent all of your PPP money as authorized, then you're not going to get forgiveness to the extent that you're holding on to that money. Now, remember, it's got to be it's got to be spent on one of these 4 authorized things. And I emphasize that even though Congress is talking about changing this, and the bill that went to the president on the 21st proposes to change this, it has not been signed into law. So what we need to realize right now is that where we're at today is you can only spend the money in one of these 4 areas. 60% on payroll, and the rest of the 40% on any combination of interest on business loans, on rent on business facilities and equipment, and utility payments on business facilities as well. It's got to be spent in that fashion. So get the money spent. If you're sitting on PPP money right now, get it spent by the end of the year in this authorized way, or you will not get forgiveness to the extent that you held on to the money.
All right, Dan, that's great information. Do you have to apply for loan forgiveness by the end of 2020?
No, you don't have to apply for loan forgiveness by the end of 2020. This is another area of confusion. I'm getting this question every single day. What if I don't apply for my loan forgiveness by the end of the year? You don't have to. You got to spend the money by the end of the year. All right. Once your period of time for spending the money has lapsed, that 24 weeks or December 31st, whichever is the earliest of the two, now you've got 10 months from that point in time, Jay, to apply for loan forgiveness. Now, the loan application, the forgiveness application, does not go to the IRS, and it does not go to the Small Business Administration, even though the SBA are the ones that underwrote all these loans. The loan forgiveness application goes to your lender. Who did you get your loan from? That's where the application goes. And you submit the application to your lender. The lender does a preliminary review of the application, Jay, and they make a preliminary determination whether to forgive the loan or not. And their answer or their preliminary determination is then reviewed by the SBA. All right, so you're going to get a preliminary answer from your lender, then it goes to the SBA for review, then you get the final determination from the SBA.
It's great information. All right, if anybody has any questions, we're going to wrap it up with some questions here. Put them in the text box here so we can answer your questions. We've got one question coming in from Jacob. Any info, Dan, about the next round of PPP?
Yeah, well, Jay, okay, Jacob, here's the thing. I have listen, this bill that has come out of Congress, all right, this is the Appropriations Act is what they call it, the Appropriations Act for 2021. This is no kidding now. I'm not making this up. You can't even make this up. This bill is 5,573 pages long. 5,573 pages is how long this is. And to make it worse, Jay, they've got a table of contents on the front side of this bill, but the table of contents has no page number references in it. So it's tedious work going through this thing, finding the various sections of the bill that deal with this issue or that issue. Just about all afternoon on Monday, I spent almost all afternoon on Monday pouring through this thing and looking at the PPP stuff very specifically. And so I can tell you that if the bill passes or some version of this bill passes, there's going to be another round of PPP. There's no question about that. This bill has about, and I forget the number, don't hold me to the number right now, but it's got hundreds of billions more dollars in it to fund another round of PPP loan. And Congress has broadened the areas under which for which the PPP money can be spent. All right, I'm not going to go through them all with you because they don't mean anything right now. Plus, I don't have the list in front of my face anyway. But I could. The point is this: if this passes in the form that it's in right now, there's going to be another PPP program, and it's going to be broader than the first one. There's no question about that. So I will make this promise to all of our viewers here, Jay, and you and I will stick to it. Once we have a final law that's been signed by the president, I'm going to put together some information on exactly how the new PPP program works, and we're going to bring that to the viewers immediately. Okay, Robert, I lost audio here. I can't hear Jay.
Here we go. Here's what we got to do, guys. That's my fault right there, because Dan was rocking. You got to get this information. You don't want to miss. Get over to facebook.com/Pilla Tax Academy. Facebook.com/Pilla Tax Academy. Hit the follow button. That way, when this live comes up, you got it. Or go to Pilla Tube. Pilla Tube, TUB.com. That's the YouTube channel for the Pilla Tax Academy. And go hit subscribe. That way, and get the notification button on there too. That way, when this information is coming out, then I suspect we're going to have to do 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even more. You and I've even talked about maybe doing a quick 15 to 20 minutes throughout every weekday, just so we can keep people up to speed going into 2021. We want people to get the information, but we also want people to be engaged with the Pilla Tax Academy, empowering. Listen, we don't know what we don't know, and I'm on a mission to get people educated and empowered about taxes. I even told Dan, and Dan laughed at me. I said, Dan, taxes has to be one of the most boring things ever. We're going to figure out a way with our marketing program to make taxes sexy. That's right, sexy taxes. And Dan just laughed about it. It's been a great show. Listen, I can't wait to get back on here. You guys got to make sure you're paying attention. Dan, any closing words for our viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. Pay attention, man, because there's a lot of change coming down the pike here. With this new bill, as I said, 5,500 pages. There's a lot of stuff in there, Jay, that we need to talk about. And that's not all of it, all right? There's more changes coming, and there's things that people need to know that haven't been changed. There's rules that have been in place for 50 years that people don't know about. And so we're going to get into this stuff as time goes on. So join us here at the Pilla Tax Academy. Don't get caught blindsided by what you don't know when it comes to IRS compliance.
Hey, that's our show. That's our show for this week. Tons of information compacted. Get over to PillaTaxAcademy.com. We've got free reports over there for you, for everybody from the everyday taxpayer to the business owner to the tax pro. You can get on the update list as things are coming out on PillaTaxAcademy.com. Thank you, Dan, for another great show. Thank you to our viewers. Do us a favor, everybody. I want everybody to type in. If you appreciated this information, it cost you nothing today for this information, and it was worth a lot. Just type in a message. Give a special thanks to Dan, to the Pilla Tax Academy for providing this information. Just go ahead and type in your comments, type in how you felt about the show. Did you get value out of it? And do us a favor. Hit the @ sign and type in one of your Facebook friends or one of your contacts. Share this with them. That's how you can thank us for putting this show on. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Good night, Jay. Merry Christmas, everybody. God bless you.